There we go. Hey everybody, it's Jonathan Harmon with my friend John Hood here, sitting at Noni's Bakery. This is my first time in here. How about you?
My first time as a bakery.
Oh yeah?
I remember this store as Stickney and Griffiths Drugstore many years ago.
Say the name again?
Stickney and Griffiths.
Stickney and Griffiths.
That were the family names. As a matter of fact, then we had 5 drugstores on the square.
No way.
As a matter of fact, all the business was on the square. A retail business was on the square before shopping centers.
Yeah.
It was Stickney and Griffiths right here. Next door was Harrison's Pharmacy. On the north side of the square was McCord and Harris Drugstore. Over on the east side was Buchanan and Tarpley Drugstore, and then what later became Messick's, Carr and Martin, K-E-R-R, Carr and Martin.
Okay.
Those are the old days.
Yeah, well, okay, so I don't know a lot about old drugstores, so help me out here. How do you have that much competition from one type of business? Did they each have kind of a specialty, or?
I don't know whether they did or not. Different personalities in the owners and who was the pharmacist, who owned and ran the drugstore.
But I guess it really hasn't changed if you think about it. So you'll have a CVS, and right next to it will be a Walgreens. And
well, that's true, yeah.
So not drastically different anymore, I guess.
Just more spread out somewhat.
Exactly.
Around town.
That's pretty neat. So Stickney and Griffiths was in here. And
later they added Ganaway. It was Stickney, Griffiths, and Ganaway.
That's a mouthful, especially if you're coughing, huh?
That's right. Usually referred to as Stickneys.
I got you. Okay. Soda fountain, all of that kind of stuff, like the
stereotypical. Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool. When Reef Sane closed, that it felt like kind of the death of that around here.
We lost something when Reef Sane closed.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It was
not just another store.
It was not.
Yeah.
It was an institution, and it was the last of its kind in our area.
I love the milkshakes.
Oh man, I know what I wouldn't give for one now. You know, even though I was telling you I'm doing the carb cycling, I'd let it slide if I could get a Reef Sane milkshake right now.
There are some good milkshakes around, but nothing like the Reef Sane milkshake.
And it had something to do with coming out of that drugstore.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So not that their ice cream was any better or anything like that, but it had something to do with being that milkshake.
You're right.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm here with State Representative retired John Hood. How long were you a representative?
12 years, 6 terms. They're 2-year terms.
And what specific area did you represent? How did that work?
Well, it's hard to describe. It's a part of central part of Murfreesboro, I guess you'd say. MTSU campus is in my district. East Main, Lytle Street.
So kind of the downtown, a big portion of the downtown and campus area.
I'd say yes.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha.
More of old Murfreesboro. More than that, really.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you and I had a conversation yesterday. Before that, you'd been in politics for a little while at the city level and the county level.
Yeah, I had been on the Murfreesboro City School Board for 16 years, and that was an appointed position at that time. The council appointed you. I followed, I think, it's Attorney John Rucker, as I recall, who served on there. Jock Rucker's father, it would be.
Okay.
And then I served on the county commission for 10 years.
But at the time, it wasn't called the county commission.
It was called the Rutherford County Quarterly Court.
Quarterly Court. That's hard to say.
And members were squires. You were a squire.
Interesting.
You could perform weddings and all kinds of things like that, which I didn't enjoy doing particularly. I would leave that up to the minister.
That makes sense.
But I worked at Murfreesboro Bank and Trust Company at that time, which was on the north side of the square.
Next to which drugstore?
It was closer to Stickney's, I guess, than because it had an opening of the building right across the street.
Gotcha.
But one Friday, I know I did about 3 weddings. People were coming to the courthouse, and the judge was not there, so there was nobody to do a wedding. So they would send them over to the bank. I remember, I think I did 3 weddings back to back.
So is that a particularly busy wedding day? I mean, it was for you, obviously, but I mean,
it was mainly because the judge wasn't in the courthouse, wasn't on duty that day, I think.
But would a judge normally perform 3 weddings in a day, or was there something special about that?
I have no idea.
Day?
Yeah, could very well.
People got spring fever, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so.
So, interesting, kind of, I guess, our connection. My ex-wife, Cindy, her grandmother was Margaret Duggan. She passed away several years ago. And you went to high school with her, right?
Small world kind of a thing. We graduated from high school 70 years ago this May.
This 70 years ago?
70 years ago.
No kidding. Are you putting together a reunion?
I'm working on it.
Are you really?
Oh, yeah.
That's outstanding.
We haven't had one in about 10 years. We should do one about every 5 years. But I think we have maybe approximately 35 members still living.
Out of how many in the class?
There were 98.
Wow. And this was at Central?
That's right. There were 98. We had 2 class members, I always claimed them. One was Leon Fox, who went back to Kittrell and graduated there. And the other was Bill Clark, who went over to Chattanooga. I've forgotten which high school at Chattanooga, but he's a great tennis player. And I always counted them, so that would make 100 if you count those 2.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Well, I hope you guys are able to get everybody together. Are most of them still local, or are they spread out?
They're everywhere. I had a call just recently from Jack Pearson, who lives in Knoxville, wanted to know if we were going to do a reunion.
And I mean, even if just you guys get together, I think you should, right?
It'll be fun, right?
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Pretty neat.
There are 3 of us that fairly regularly drink coffee over I'm sorry.
That's okay.
At a local place, anyway, I'll put it that way, that I know I see from time to time. Yeah.
Gotcha. So still some folks haunting around here.
Hooper Supply. Well, I couldn't think of Hooper Supply.
Yeah.
You need to go over there one day and have coffee.
It sounds like it might be dangerous.
You would enjoy it, I think.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So we were talking a little bit also yesterday, so we're going to kind of recap some of that, obviously. But so you were Murfreesboro Bank and Trust. Right? And then you were telling me that that particular bank started to acquire some other banks in the region, not really the area.
I worked for 3 banks in 20 years and didn't change jobs. It was Murfreesboro Bank and Trust Company, formed in 1905, right across the street from where we are sitting now. And it later acquired 3 failed banks in other counties: Smith County, Franklin County, Warren County. It was a little awkward to be called Murfreesboro Bank and Trust Company in Winchester.
Right.
So the bank changed its name to Mid-South Bank to more represent the area.
But not the Mid-South Bank that exists now.
That's right. No, not the same one at all. Then later, the bank was acquired or merged with Third National Bank out of Nashville. So those are the 3 banks.
Gotcha.
That we worked for.
And SunTrust obviously is still still functioning, still here, big bank. So, okay, but you never changed jobs.
That's right.
Didn't even change location, right?
Really didn't. No. Later, we moved to East Main Street and built the building there, where the old James K. Polk Hotel used to be. Right. And so I changed locations, but didn't change jobs.
Gotcha. So I meant to ask you yesterday, and I've always been curious. For some reason, I am just absolutely fascinated with old theaters. So, Franklin restored their downtown theater.
And I've been there. It's really a nice venue.
They did a fantastic job.
It really did.
And of course, the Princess Theater is gone.
Right.
Did you go to many?
That was where you went to the movies.
Right.
The Princess Theater many years ago burned one Sunday. I remember when we got out of church, it was burning, flaming. And so they had another theater on the south side of the square called the Roxy Theater, right about where 1 Hour Cleaners is.
Okay.
And you would have to go there if you wanted to go to a local movie until they built the theater back.
Gotcha.
And I remember going to the Roxy. You could be sitting there and you'd see mice running across the stage.
So not the nicest theater, huh?
Not first class, but it worked.
That's fantastic. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting, you were talking about how they had to reapportion the county because tell me that story again. I guess
what is now the county commission was known as the Rutherford County Quarterly Court, and that was the representative body for the county. I think I gave you the wrong number. Yes, I believe it was 54 members of the county commission, their county court. And it met quarterly, as the name suggested, and was the governing body for Rutherford County.
Right.
Dr. Sam Ingram, who was on the faculty at MTSU at the time, later became president, and Dr. Earl Hinton, music department, instituted a lawsuit based on the one-man, one-vote rule. As I mentioned to you, at that time, most of the people were living in Murfreesboro. It was a rural county, an agricultural county, and the majority of the people lived in Murfreesboro within the city limits. It had 4 representatives, and the rest of the county had the other 50, which was out of balance. So they initiated...
Give me a time frame, approximately. Year.
1968, I believe it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s. So they initiated a lawsuit called one man, one vote rule. In other words, you get equal representation. And the lawsuit was a winner and declared that it was out of balance. So at that time, individuals ran, including myself, a lot of business people around town, ran for the new Rutherford County Commission. And we developed that into 42 members, as I recall, 21 districts with 2 districts from each, 2 members from each of the 21 districts.
And so the idea, when you say one man, one vote, with the concentration, if this is the county as a whole, the concentration of people is right here.
That's right.
And it's very spread out otherwise.
Right.
Very agrarian.
Very agrarian.
Huge parcels of land, things like that. So I'm assuming they had originally had it more divided up geographically and not necessarily by concentration of population.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And so the lawsuit basically said, hey, wait a second. We've got 4 people representing the vast majority of the population. And then we've got these other 50 people that can make decisions that have very few constituents to answer to or to really represent.
Well, it balanced it out as far as population. I mean, not only 21 districts, but it still had the balance of each district had essentially the same number of people at the time. It was
which goes along with that one man, one vote type idea. So when they did that, did they try to, let's say all the folks that represented within the city of Murfreesboro, did they try to kind of piece together some of the rural with the more suburban, or did they concentrate this group and then have...
No, it was an effort to balance the representation in each district, whatever it took to be able to get I'd say, equal number of people in each district. Essentially equal number.
But not necessarily an equal representation from, I guess, types of population.
No.
Just purely on numbers.
Yeah, on numbers. Right.
Okay. Right. Interesting. Late 60s. So, and it's still fairly well done.
I would say so. Yes.
So, and they reapportion how often, do you think, or redraw those districts now?
Well, I don't know that it's been done since then, as a matter of fact.
Really? The population has definitely changed.
The population definitely changed, that's for sure, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what it would require. Probably another lawsuit, I guess, to redistrict.
Yeah, I mean, because Smyrna is nowhere near what it was in the late 60s.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Laverne too.
Right.
Even Eagleville to some extent,
Yeah, some degree, and it continues to grow.
Sure. Interesting. So, I'm trying to think now. Here's a question for you.
Okay.
You go to the state, right? You're in Nashville. Rutherford County is what it is. What years were you at the state as a state representative?
Well, 96 to 2008.
Okay, so very similar to how it is now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, population's grown, but it's not drastically different in construction, if you will.
I retired from SunTrust Bank in 96. At that time, Representative John Bragg, who had represented us for, I believe, 20 plus years, decided to step down and go home. And he had asked me, would I be interested? Well, I won't say that I never thought about it, but the timing just worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
To run as retiring from the bank. So I ran and was successful in doing so.
So what was the big fight at that time?
Well, maybe not at that time, but a little bit later on, after I was in the legislature, the Governor, Don Sundquist at the time, proposed an income tax, a state income tax.
Not a very popular proposal.
Not popular at all, as a matter of fact. And that would be the hottest issue of all, I guess, during the time, as I recall.
And so let me ask you this: when you and I were talking about that, that was something that you opposed in the legislature.
Well, I'd said I would not support it. Yes, right.
So you didn't actively oppose it necessarily, is what you're saying?
Not necessarily didn't work against it or anything. I just didn't vote for it. Yeah.
Right. And so that
as
brings,
I promised.
Right, exactly. And that brings up the question, and this is what we got to talk about yesterday, is what do you do? You have a body of people that you represent, your constituency, the ones that put you there, right? And you make certain promises to them, and they believe that you're going to act a certain way on certain issues. What do you do if you get up there and you find out that perhaps you weren't as well informed on an issue, or perhaps in your heart of hearts that what you told them and you believed at that time has now changed? Well, and you go against the constituency.
Yeah, that's entirely possible, that you find out more that you didn't know more about an issue, and you would change your direction. Now, it's up to you, I think, to inform your constituents and the people in your district of what you've done and why you've done it. Now, that may not go over well with a lot of people, and that may not necessarily be not keeping your word. Income tax being a little different situation.
Sure.
But you become better informed, because you can go down there thinking you know a lot about a particular issue, and then lo and behold, you find out that that's not quite so.
Right.
And you have a lot of information you get down there. I mentioned to you about lobbyists who visit you about particular issues. There are two kinds of lobbyists. There's some that work for an organization, like the TEA, the TSBA, Tennessee School Board Association. That's all they do every day, is represent that particular organization, their issues.
Right.
Then there are contract lobbyists that may have a whole list of people they represent.
So a particular organization might not be large enough or well-funded enough to have a full-time lobbyist.
Full-time, true.
So they kind of outsource it.
Or need one, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And they may come to you one day about an education issue. They may come to you the next day about a road issue, depending on who they represent. And
that's interesting.
I think I mentioned to you, one of the most important words to me in the legislature is trust.
Yes.
And once you lose somebody's trust, or you lose that trust, then they're not very much of value to you after that. You can't very well depend on them if they don't tell you always the straight facts.
That's right.
And many times I found the lobbyists will come about an issue, and I'll say, okay, what's the other side? And they'll tell you the other side of the issue many times.
And that's important for you to make a wise decision.
Very definitely.
Because very rarely, I'll go ahead and use an infinitive. I don't like infinitives, but almost never is it A and B. Right?
Probably right. Yeah.
I mean, there's an 8.1 and 8.2 and 8.3.
Okay, all right, in between. Yeah.
There's going to be other gray areas. There's going to be a context, if you will, to help you make the best decision.
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Okay. I see your True Blue pin there, and that's how you and I have gotten to know each other again.
Through the alumni board.
That's right.
When did you graduate?
So I have 2 degrees.
Okay.
So 04 and 06
is
when I graduated. So I've got a bachelor's in entrepreneurship and a master's in business ed. I taught at Blackman High School for 3 years.
Oh, did you really? Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when did you graduate?
I graduated in 54 and 74.
54, excellent. And what are your degrees?
I had a BS in social science, I think. I had a major minor in social science. Then I had a master's in education with administration and supervision.
Oh, okay. Now, did you work in the schools?
No, I did not. I wanted an MBA. Because it had just went during the early days of being offered at MTSU. But I found out I had more prerequisites to getting an MBA than it did even in the program.
Right.
So that's when I went over to the MED.
Gotcha.
And I was working out there at the time on staff at MTSU when I did my master's degree.
Oh, okay. What did you do on staff there?
Yeah, I first of all was director of development, fundraising, and then later was assistant to the president.
Oh, wow.
interesting.
That is very interesting. I bet that was a pretty exciting job.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, being involved in the Alumni Association has been a tremendous benefit to me personally.
Good.
Just as far as being informed, understanding what's going on. I mean, MTSU is, they're rocking and rolling.
Oh, absolutely.
It is unbelievable. And when we have our meetings, getting the update from President McPhee about all the fantastic things that are going on, I just sit there and just kind of, wow, Now, you're a past president for the Alumni Board?
Alumni Association,
right? Okay. And what year were you president there?
I'm trying to remember. I can't peg it on anything. I remember Jonah Fitch from McMinnville was the president of the Alumni Association prior to me, and Jonah died during his term of office, and I filled out his term and then did the full term.
Oh my, and that was before I got there.
And for the life of me, I cannot remember the year now.
That's all right.
Yeah.
What do you think, so let me back up. One of the things that President McPhee always talks about when he addresses the board is how important it is for alumni to kind of stay involved, or at least stay informed about what's going on campus. And his point, and I've really latched onto this point, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is that the better the stature of MTSU is, definitely in the local populace, but even on a national level, the more valuable our degrees are.
Absolutely.
Right? So, when people say I graduated from Harvard, there's a certain value that is instantaneous to them. And I'm not comparing MTSU to Harvard, but MTSU has some Ivy League level programs. And the more people know about that, the more valuable it raises all ships.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
So what are some things that maybe you've heard recently, some MTSU things that, that these people might not know?
Well, the mechatronics program that MTSU has, and going to be able to get a building to house the program.
Through a grant with Siemens, right? Or a partnership with Siemens?
A partnership with Siemens, And this particularly prepares people for jobs like at Nissan, because the jobs at Nissan are certainly not very well dissimilar to the jobs when I worked at Samsonite and we made card tables and chairs.
Yes.
And because that was all by hand and done. We have so much automation today in the various industries.
Well, and especially in automobile industry and anything that requires super precision. Just a slight malfunction on a weld on a car and it can be disastrous.
Yeah. And the other thing is the concrete industry management program. Just unbelievable, the success of that program, preparing students to be able to get into the industry.
And it's straight in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if they're willing to travel, they can go into some high-paying jobs right out of school.
And literally all around the world.
That's right.
Everywhere on the globe.
Yeah, I've forgotten the number that a graduate typically will receive. I think 12 or 15 offers or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
They can make a choice from.
It is 100% for the students that pursue it. It's 100% job placement, is it not?
I think that's right.
Yeah. I think it's one of the few programs that's like that. That's unbelievable, and they're high-paying jobs. They're not. They're not entry level.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So pretty interesting. I'll tell you, he shared at our last meeting. What about 16 Grammy winners in the last 3 years or 5 years or whatever it was?
Yeah, at the recent Grammy Awards, MTSU is very well represented out there in the awards.
Yeah,
and won a number of Grammys this last year. It was a real fine feature on NBC News. Telling about that success.
Yeah, they called us a hit factory.
Yeah, hit factory.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what struck me because they played the clip of that news
NBC
piece.
News.
I'll tell you what struck me is how surprised the news people, the anchors were, and it came out of a little state school.
Right. Yeah, right. Anything but that's what they think about it.
That was funny to me.
It was.
Little. There's 25,000 students there. That's not exactly little.
That's true.
So how has campus changed? This is an obvious question, but how has campus itself physically changed since you attended there?
Well, there are many additional buildings, and we have one under construction right now of our classroom building, and then we have the mechatronics building coming up. I guess that would be the main difference in physically would be the buildings that have been added. You know, what we call the new science building, which it literally is, I guess. $47 million that we're able to get through the legislature and bring a state-of-the-art facility to the campus. As a matter of fact, with the old science building prior to this was built, there were high schools that had better equipped laboratories and equipment than we did at a university.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, former Representative Joe Carr was in the House at the time. He brought, for a basketball game, brought down the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the Senate, and other members of our local delegation to a basketball game. And it was in December, and we toured them into the facilities that we had existing then. And they were just amazed. They couldn't believe the antiquated situation we were dealing with. And that really helped us when it came to the point of getting that legislature passed and that building funded to be what it is today.
We took a tour of the new building basically right as it was opening. I don't think it was even fully opened yet. And I mean, it is incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
It is.
The lab space, the lab equipment, the greenhouse, on and on and on and on in there. And it's incredible. And then they were able, with that space, they were able to come back to the old buildings
and redo it.
Those.
And it's a beautiful state.
They're state of the art now as well. And I love that they still preserved some of the old, the old windows, the terrazzo floors, and some of that. That speaks to me, that they held true to some of that. So, what do you think? What's on the horizon for MTSU? I know you're pretty plugged in over there. What should people start to get excited about?
Well, some of the new programs that are being introduced, the MTSU is constantly reaching out to the community colleges in the area to be able to get their students to be able to come here to do their final 2 years.
Right.
And
which let's pause on that for a second, because that's kind of unique, isn't it? Because recently, and you guys may or may not be aware of this, but there was kind of a schism of sorts at the upper levels for state universities. They took Tennessee Board of Regents, and then they took, there we go. They split it up, and the major universities kind of got sent on their own.
The 6 universities that were under the Tennessee Board of Regents came out and created their own board of trustees.
Each individual.
Yeah, and they're LGI, locally governed institutions, they're called. Memphis, University of Memphis, Austin Peay, Tennessee State, MTSU, ETSU, and Tennessee Tech. Those, and each has their own board. For many years, University of Memphis State it used to be, wanted its own board. And at one time, one of the governors was about to do that, I think. But I don't know whether it's an answer to that, but rather than give Memphis its own board, they decided to pull out the 6 4-year institutions and give each of them their own board of trustees.
And what's interesting is the UT system is not part of the Board of Regents.
That's right. It's completely different.
It's completely different.
As it always has been.
And so what happens then, and this was kind of a scary thing at first when it was happening, is that above TBR would have been THEC, right?
Right.
And that's who essentially apportions all of the funds.
And it's still there.
Right.
Yeah, many years ago we had certain institutions that were maybe more aggressive in getting funding and everything. It wasn't in coordination. So they appointed the Tennessee Higher Education Commission over the UT system and the Board of Regents system, to be able to coordinate programs as well as funding. In other words, every institution didn't need an XYZ course in beans or whatever.
Right.
And so they coordinated that, I guess, avoiding over duplication. Well, and then helping with the funding, to get the funding.
And the scary part is, if you've got TBR that's got 6 major universities, and then all of the community colleges, and even the trade schools, right? And they've got a certain amount of bargaining power because that's a huge representative, right? And then you've got the UT system, which has its own bargaining power as well. Well, now you've got still the UT system that represents, multiple universities. You've got each individual university, and then you've got TBR that still represents all of the community colleges and all of that. So the fear at first was, well, man, what's going to happen? It feels like we're losing tremendous bargaining power. And that just, at least for MTSU, that just hasn't proven to be true, has it?
It has not, and it worked out real well for us, and I presume the other institutions too. And we have an exceptionally fine board of trustees. Because each of because we went down during the hearings when they were all being approved, and it's just so impressive the members that we have on the board of trustees.
And so now MTSU gets to represent their own well-being, if you will, as far as funding goes.
We go individually to the legislature, right, for our funding.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I think we've got a pretty good case to build for pretty much anything that we want.
I think you're right.
With the exception of a law school, which we don't need to go there, do we?
That didn't work out with Valparaiso, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that one was painful to me, but you win some, you lose some, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, at one time, there was a move to bring the Nashville School of Law here to the campus, and would still operate a Nashville campus as well. And that was when we moved out of the old library building of the new existing library and had somewhat of a vacant building. And that would have been an ideal place to put it. It wasn't because of the building, but it was because it was an opportunity to do so. But I think having to do with some of the integration suits and issues and everything else, it didn't work out.
Sure. Well, and that's now become a tremendous art facility that,
absolutely.
Quite honestly, they were hurting for facilities pretty bad, housed in a barn.
Yeah, that's for sure.
At the
old
time.
art barn.
Yeah, it was a cool building, but not an overly safe building.
I agree.
So what are you doing these days? You're not in the legislature?
Well, I've been working as a part-time employee of MTSU, mainly helping to represent us at the legislature. Okay. Not a lobbyist, but just a representative of the institution, as most of the LGI institutions have somebody down there that represents them on a day-to-day or weekly basis.
Gotcha. So what does that entail? I mean, you're not lobbying necessarily. You're just, there's a resource? Or?
Well, there's a resource. I mean, you're visiting with members, our own delegation, as well as, depending on the issue, whether it be education committee or finance committee or whatever like that, and being able to help get them information to understand what our needs are.
Gotcha. And I would venture to say that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, and that is the trust issue. People know that your yes is a yes and your no is a no. Yeah. And you know what you're talking about.
Hopefully.
And if you don't know what you're talking about, you don't say anything. Right. That's a pretty good way to be, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. Anything else that you want to share? Rutherford County, MTSU?
Well, it's a wonderful place to be. The community has been so good to me. I've been able to raise my family, work, and be involved over the years and see it grow and develop. And yes, with growth we have problems, but I'd rather have that kind of problem than went in the opposite direction.
For sure.
And as a realtor, you're well aware of
100%. Yes, and your son is a mortgage lender, correct?
Yeah, Mark, son Mark is.
Okay, and what company is he with?
He's with First Bank out of McMinnville.
Gotcha, but his office is here.
Locally here, yeah.
Okay, well, very
good. I call it Mark Pirtle's Bank.
I got you. I actually know exactly where that is. So shout out to Mark Hood there. And let's see, you got a couple comments. Brett Garner, one of my partners, says, Thank you, Mr. Hood, for all you've done and what you continue to do to serve our amazing community.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And I think that's a pretty unanimous opinion of you. So I don't know if you saw it, but I put on here that we're having coffee with Statesman John Hood. You said I wasn't supposed to use representative anymore.
Well, since I'm not there,
Right.
There's still people will call me that, even particularly members of the legislature that I served with.
Sure.
We've used the term back
Sure.
and forth.
'Cause that's how they got to know you. All right, so last question.
Okay, Jonathan.
Did you ever get into any just really heated arguments with anybody at the legislature?
I don't think I ever did.
I believe
that. Yeah, any heated argument, yeah.
Okay, well, good deal. Mr. Hood, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I appreciate you. Appreciate what you've done for our community and what you continue to do.
I enjoyed being with you. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and now you know a little bit more about Facebook too. We had a crash course yesterday.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
So I'll show you how to share this here in just a little bit. All right.
Good. Thanks,
Very
Jonathan.
good. This is Jonathan Harmon with the J. Harmon Home Team with John Hood. And if you have any questions, put them on here. I'll make sure I get them over to him. If there's anything else that you want to know, if you're watching this after we're live, that'd be great. So thanks. Have a great rest of the day.